Thank you for joining us for our webinar today. We're going to wait just a couple more minutes. We have some people signing on still, so we will get started here just in about 1 minute. Thank you. Thank you all and welcome to today's webinar, Vendor Portals, Procurement to Payables. We hope to have a very informative and interactive session today, so we appreciate you joining us. We're going to cover a lot of material today, and we want to keep it pretty interactive, excuse me. Just as a few housekeeping items, again, we do want your participation, so you will notice there is a place here on the GoToMeeting for you to ask questions. So as questions come up throughout the webinar, by all means, please do type in your questions, and we will get to them, at the appropriate time, and we'll certainly answer as many, if not all, of the questions that we can. So once again, I really thank you for your participation, and hope this is a very helpful session for you. By ways of introduction, my name is Jim O'Rourke, and I'm the business development side of the house for ICG Consulting. And I have two of my colleagues today that are going to be helping me out. We have Jason Douglas, who's a solution architect. Jason's the one responsible for really architecting and building with his team the solutions that you'll see today. We also have with us Shauna Summers. Shauna is a subject matter expert, so Shauna will jump in and contribute, certainly on process issues and functionality as we go through the demos today. So a little bit about us, since I think most of you probably don't know a whole lot about ICG. We were founded in 1990. We're based in Scottsdale, Arizona, which is where Shauna and I are at, but we do have other offices throughout the country. In fact, Jason's coming to us from Florida today. And our focus really is on the financial back office. So that encompasses things like accounts payable, receivable, procurement, purchasing, things of those nature, things in the back office, which are generally vendor facing, although some customer facing, and also tend to have transactions and a lot of transactional activity involved. One of the hallmarks of our solutions is we're ERP agnostic and systems independent. So what that simply means is, regardless of what system you may have and use for your back-end processing, for your inventory and accounting systems and various types of systems, we can integrate with it. We have integrated with everything from the large SAP and Oracles, down to smaller homegrown type systems. So it really doesn't matter what kind of a solution you're using on your back end. We can go ahead and integrate our solutions with that. And one of the reasons for that we have to do that is because you can see we have a very diverse client base. We're not focused on any one vertical industry. We're very horizontally aligned, if you will, meaning our solutions really fit into companies of all sizes, all different industries. And as you can see from this partial list here of our customers, it kind of spans a large gamut of industries. So vendor portals, procurement to payables. We're really going to talk about vendor portals, and we kind of break that out into two different categories. And lots of you have probably been exposed to vendor portals and been on webinars or seen presentations or discussions. And vendor portals can take on many different meanings and many different things to different people. So for purposes of today and what we're going to talk about and focus in, let's look at two different areas that we're going to go ahead and focus our efforts on. First one being administrative vendor management. So those are those activities of onboarding a new vendor, very administrative in nature, collecting data, verifying data, doing all your validations, all the ongoing maintenance and administration that comes to place with vendors when they have a change of address, change of remit to, insurance expirations, licensing, things of that nature. And then the vendor messaging, the back and forth that takes place with your vendors where you're trying to communicate information to them and vice versa. And again, we can use portals to really automate a lot of that, and you'll see that today. second half of the equation on vendor portals is transactional vendor management. It's all that transaction intense activities. Tends to be, both purchasing and accounts payable focused. So I'll actually start at the bottom of this little list here, but certainly from a purchasing standpoint, once you've onboarded the vendor, then you're going to actually start transacting with them. Probably the first thing you're going to do is you're going to send out some RFPs or RFQs, whatever the case may be. So we have the tools through the vendor portal. We can use that to dispatch those RFPs and RFQs out to them, as well as update them, message them, any changes or updates to those RFXs. Very similar functionality along with purchase orders. Once you select a vendor, you want to submit or dispatch a purchase order. Again, you can use your vendor portal if you're not already having some automated way of doing that. Really is a very efficient means of dispatching purchase orders out to the suppliers that you want to dispatch them to. And then again, update those purchase orders as things change, dates change, things of that nature. Have the ability to have a very interactive updating process to where you're communicating with your vendors so that when things are coming, the shipment's going to be made on time, and you can have that kind of dialogue back and forth, and we'll certainly see that in the demos. Excuse me. The next part of that really is the payables kind of focused transactions. Web invoice submit, the ability to use vendor portals to accept invoices through the web, as well as credit memos and other related documents. Online payment inquiry. Instead of having people call into a vendor services or a payables department, they can go right online and find out the status of a payment, where it's at, has it been rejected, when's it going to get paid, what check number, things of that nature. Any disputes they may have with payment, they can submit and track online and kind of follow that through the process, as well as dynamic discounting and other supply chain finance types of vehicles that you may want to use, again, which are becoming very popular today. So as you can see, there's a lot to it, a lot to cover today. So the demos, we're going to get into it, and then you're going to see that. Now we're going to talk about the vendor portals, procurements to payables, and some of the features of the vendor portals that you're going to see today and that we've been talking about. We really break it down into two kind of categories: the administrative types of activities that take place with your vendors, where you can use portals to automate those processes and make those more efficient, as well as the transactional side of the house. We have a lot of transactional activities between purchasing and payables, and again, requires a level of automation and efficiency that certainly portals can accommodate, and that's what we try to do. Looking first at the administrative side of the house, again, those are things like onboarding new vendors. As many of you certainly know, onboarding new vendors requires gathering a lot of data, gathering documents, validating that information to make sure they are in fact who they say they are and where they're at and what kind of products and services they supply, and all of that information and data that you have to collect. And then once you onboard those vendors, certainly you have the administrative function of administering and maintaining those vendors, throughout your relationship with them. So that's things like obviously any kind of change of address, remittance, banking information, payment information that may change, that becomes very important, as well as certainly insurance expirations, licensing expirations, all those kinds of activities that you need to track and stay on top of. And of course, vendor messaging, the vehicle by which you can communicate back and forth in a very collaborative fashion with your vendors and suppliers to notify them when things are going to expire, to get message and pass data and documents as well back and forth. The second part of that is the transactional side of the house, and that really is procurement, purchasing, payables, where you have a lot of things going back and forth, a lot of transactions taking place. So whether that's RFXs, RFQs, RFPs, whatnot, a way to dispatch those out to the potential suppliers that you've onboarded already, and providing updates to those RFXs as things may change, dates may change, whatever the case may be. As well as when you now decide to dispatch a purchase order, to have a very efficient way of using the portal to dispatch purchase orders out to your suppliers. Again, communicate updates to them, get updates back from them, and we'll see a lot of that. There's a lot of flexibility there and some things that you can do that really do make the process much more efficient. Downstream on the accounts payable side of the house, certainly vendor portals are very popular vehicles to submit web invoices. You've probably seen that before, and that's certainly very critical, whether you're using a web form to gather information where someone can come on, log onto the portal and submit an invoice by filling out a web form, using PO Flip and things of that nature. Or if they're going to attach through the portal and attach a billing file, a payables file, if you will, invoice file. Online payment inquiry, the ability for your suppliers and vendors to come online and check the status of a payment without having to call into your department and have a person go research that for them. They can submit and track disputes, and then certainly dynamic discounting or any kind of a supply chain finance vehicle. Those are becoming very popular today, and vendor portals are a great way to do that. Now let's take a look at what we call the vendor cycle. The vendor cycle is really just kind of the flow of the information and how the portals might be structured and how you might use the portals. And I make this comment, by the way, is some of you on this, certainly on this webinar, will have an interest in some or part of the things we're talking about, but not all of it. And our solutions are designed so that you can go ahead and implement any particular functionality that is of interest to you, that is of value to you now. You don't have to really buy all of the functionality to just get a little bit. You can go out and get what you need when you need it. If you want to add more on later, fantastic, but it's really designed that way. So let's look at the vendor cycle. We break it down into kind of three different distinct areas as we break down the cycle. We have the kind of the pre-processing activities before you start doing business, the actual processing of transactions that we kind of talked about, and then the post-process, some of the activities that take place after the processing. So pre-process, we're looking basically at vendor onboarding. So those activities of data collection, validation, make sure they're in compliance with all of whether it be the laws, your internal corporate requirements, diversity, whatever those things that you're interested in, whatever that information is that you need to collect to make sure that you have the vendors you want on board, you can use the portal for that. Obviously, once you've onboarded the vendor, you've brought them on, and now that you're going to start doing business with them, you're going to start processing those transactions, starting with, again, as we talked about, the RFX dispatch and update, PO update, and dispatch. We have certainly payment data capture, the web invoices that we talked about coming into the web, PO Flip, and all the workflow that kind of goes behind the scenes for that transaction, that processing automation, if you will. Then it flows over to the post-process. So this is kind of how the flow works, where you now have the payments, you now have the people, suppliers calling in for inquiring about payments, submitting disputes, want to take advantage of discounting programs, and of course, as we talked about, all that maintenance and administration of your vendors going forward. So that's kind of how we're going to show the demo today, kind of following this order of the cycle. And again, so I think this should be very informative, and we're going to go ahead now and get this demo cranked up here. So start showing you some real world examples. And once again, please do, as we're going through this in the demos, type in your questions and we'll get to those at the appropriate time. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Jason and have Jason fire up the demos, and then Jason and I will kind of guide you through those. Jason? As I said, first thing I want to start off with here is vendor onboarding. And as you can see from this first introduction page, this demo that we're going to show you has a lot of different categories. And in most organizations, you're not going to go in and look at all of this information or collect all of this information. But certainly, all of that stuff is available. And we do have customers that, in fact, collect all of this and more. But it's categorized, you can see, by collecting company information, contacts, sales tax and licenses. I won't go through all of them, but there's a lot of categories of information that you can go ahead and collect and go ahead and look at. So the way this thing flows is we kind of have, you can click the boxes, or there's several different ways of getting at it. Go ahead, Jason, let's take a look at company information. And you'll notice along the top, you see that green bar with the blue. Now, keep in mind, if you're the buyer, you're a buying organization, this is an onboarding portal that you're using. What you're doing here is you're tracking. You need, once all of these green boxes are filled, then the profile is complete, and you can go ahead and onboard that customer. But this is really a supplier self-service. So the vendor has to come on here and fill these things out. They don't have to do it all in one sitting. We're asking for a lot of information, and it may be multiple people involved in filling it out. So they can log in, log out, finish it. But what you're seeing along the top is the tracking. So you can actually see the progress and how things are going, with that supplier, where they're at. This very first one, you start to collect very basic information, supplier business name, DBAs, parent company, things of that nature, their website. Are they a foreign entity or a foreign government? And you'll see that's a drop-down box. And a lot of these are very dynamic. So, for instance, if you're a foreign entity or a foreign government, answering yes or no here is, it isn't going to matter on this page, but it will matter downstream. Because if you're a foreign entity, then you're going to have to deal with W-8 information versus W-9 information if you're a U.S. vendor. So a lot of that comes into play. Also, as we're going through this, and really all of our portals, the one thing I do want you to keep in mind is, excuse me, these are highly configurable. So any of these fields that you're seeing that we're talking about and showing you, you have the ability to go in and fix. You can, whatever information is important to you. We threw a lot of things down that are kind of common data points for collection for our vendors, and our customers, but again, your business, your industry may dictate other information that we're not covering. You can put anything you want in here, so it's very important to understand these are highly configurable and very easy to configure. It doesn't require a lot of customization. It's really not a very difficult process to do that. So again, here we're collecting address information, which would certainly be important. What's your primary business address? Going into remit to addresses, you may have multiple remit tos. I'm sure some of you have vendors that do business in multiple different regions and states and districts where you're going to need different addresses. So you can add as many as you want. Again, you can ask the different kind of questions. Flowing from that, we start talking about contact information. Again, now it's going to be kind of important for you to start collecting as you're onboarding a vendor. Who are the people you're talking to and getting that contact information. A lot of times what we hear from our customers is a lot of this information is missing in the vendor master. So really it's kind of important to capture all this up front, get it right, get that stuff into your vendor master where it's appropriate. And really identifying. A lot of times they may have a main contact, but they don't have a credit card contact, or they don't have a sales rep contact. So you can actually identify which types of contacts, the information you're collecting, and collect all of that information again, and collect as many as you want. It's really because of this pages like this and information like this that a lot of our customers not only use this, kind of parenthetically here, not only use this technology to onboard new vendors, but they will go through and they will ask existing vendors every couple of years to go through and update this. So we have some that do it every year. Go through and fill out that kind of company information, contact information. So again, it's a good way of keeping the vendor master clean and a good exercise for them. So moving along here from the contact information, now we start to collect data and things that become important to you that are important here. So you have things like sales tax permits, business licenses. We have here, you'll see gaming licenses, and again, this is where the configurability comes into play. If there are things in your industry, particular industry, where you need maybe contractor license, but you don't care about the gaming, you're not in that business, or you have other licenses that may be relevant in your business, you can certainly add those. So any kind of permits and licensing really comes into play. Jason, if you wouldn't mind talking for a few seconds really about kind of the expirations and how that all works, as well as, uploading documents and where all that gets stored and some of the things that are happening in the background.
Sure. So as you're looking at this form, there are a few things. I mean, the form itself is relatively straightforward, we hope, but there are a few things that happen in the background that are fed off of this form, and this is stuff that lives throughout the duration of your relationship with a given vendor. So, for example, we've got a business license here that is about ready to expire. In the background, we maintain services that allow you to be notified, your vendor to be notified at varying levels of frequency and severity as that expiration date approaches, and that's true of any sort of piece of information that is time sensitive within the system. So you might have diversity information. If we looked at the diversity form, there's all sorts of diversity certifications that need to be renewed yearly or semi-annually or biannually or whatever. Likewise, insurance documents. Insurance has a term, so you might verify that the vendor has the appropriate insurances and appropriate documentation related to that for a period of 2 years, but when that expires, you need to get that new documentation in. So we do allow a plethora of automated services on the back end to both notify you and your suppliers that that some of these deadlines are upcoming, give the suppliers ample opportunity to fix the problem before you even have to deal with it, but also provide a workflow for you all to handle those scenarios where now you've got a supplier and they haven't provided the information. It gives you options whether you're going to put that supplier on hold or reach out to them directly or what have you. As far as documents go, we can also allow the users to upload documents. It's just like you would expect. A pretty standard document upload form, and those documents get stored in a repository that is just for you, and get stored in perpetuity too. So even as next year's business licenses come in, you'll have the prior years as well.
Super. And again, I think that's, that's really important to a lot of people when, whether you use our repository or use our repository for short term, and then we can certainly integrate if you have an imaging or content management system, doc management system, and load that up. So just tons of flexibility. So moving right along, and certainly something that's going to be pretty important for the people in the payables, we can go into the tax section and talk about tax for a minute. So the tax section, again, this is pretty important, again, because obviously you need this to onboard into business with a customer, and getting this right and getting all the information really helps, as well as not only in the procurement side of the house and setting a new vendor up, but also certainly on the payable side of the house and making sure that we get it right. So you're collecting either tax ID and Social Security information, and then we have the ability to go ahead and verify that, which is pretty important. And what this does is punches out, and in this case we use a third party that goes in and accesses the IRS website, as opposed to direct connect to IRS website, which you can do. It's just very cumbersome with the IRS, as you might imagine. And we'll go ahead and verify that. And the reason that we have, one of the reasons that we have the supplier actually in a self-service format do that is because they know exactly, how their corporate name is spelled and how all that's going to be, viewed by the IRS. So, for instance, if you put in, A Cement Company Inc., and really that's not the way it's set up with the IRS. With the IRS, it may be A Cement Company or A Cement Corporation. So it's not going to validate until you get that exactly right. And again, you saw Jason do that verification. You got that error message, and that's perfect, because one of the things you do want to avoid down the road is fraud of setting up a company that's not a legitimate organization. So by using that tax ID verification service, you're getting that. You can put in a lot of, obviously, all the information you need to capture for your W-9, including this signature. And this signature down here that's being typed in is actually accepted as the IRS in this format, in a vendor portal format, is accepted as a valid signature. So by someone in the signature block, they're going in and typing in their name. That is perfectly acceptable. If for whatever reason you wanted a copy of that W-9, I'm not sure why you would, but if you did, you certainly can just download that. It's going to go ahead and make a PDF representation of that for you, and then you can go ahead and download that. Looks just like, obviously, the regular W-9 form. You have that for your records. You might want to store that in your content or document management system. So again, you have all the documentation and that you need. So tax, always a big deal, and again, I think that's pretty powerful, especially the part about the verification. Let's talk about insurance for a second. Insurance is always a big deal with a lot of customers because, again, you have a certain amount of risk. So your risk management people are certainly going to be concerned about this. So on this particular page, again, like everything, and I'm going to get very redundant here because it's important, it's very configurable. In this case, we've actually put policy information on this page. This is, what a lot of our customers want. So rather than have, they state right up front, here is what our requirements are for commercial general, for workman's comp, employer liability coverage, so that the vendor, this prospective vendor coming in your onboarding knows right up front, here's what's being expected. So they can go in now and they can go in and start loading in, what their insurance carriers are, again, the effective and expiration dates, you know, the amounts of the insurance, and actually upload those documents. And again, this section is going to have a lot of features, very much like Jason described, you know, earlier when we were talking, in the fact that you're going to have, it's going to track these dates for you. You're going to have the ability to message. Okay, Jason.
The only thing I'd like to add there, Jim, is well, a few things. One,
Yep.
we can also configure things like minimums and waivers and things like that, because we understand and our customers understand that policy is one thing, and then you eventually have to get down to doing business, and you know, perhaps that window washer that you're hiring one time, or to handle one of your smaller properties, isn't going to have the minimum $2 million liability coverage, and that might be okay, but the point is, depending on the answers provided here, we can also provide a workflow on the back end so that the appropriate folks within your organization can look at that, can evaluate that, can see the documents that have been uploaded, can review the rest of the profile, and then can make a business decision as far as you know, whether that waiver should be granted for this particular supplier or not. So it really provides a lot of flexibility for you all, because again, policy is one thing and risk management policies are one thing, but there's a bit of a gray area sometimes as those interact with actually trying to conduct business.
Absolutely. And again, when we talk about those expirations too, in this app and in a number of the others that you'll see, you know, there's a lot of messaging that can go on too, and that does go on between not only internally. So as Jason said, you can have workflow and messaging where expiration is coming up, you're notifying buyers, or you're notifying you know, other people that may be responsible for that supplier relationship. But you can also message directly to and put in escalations to the vendor. So, you know, you may notify the vendor 120 days out, and if they sit on it and do nothing, and another 30 days goes by, you can escalate that up to another higher level within that organization. So you can communicate back and forth automatically without having to remember or put it in a tickler file. And again, I can tell you one thing, risk managers love this. So if you have risk managers that don't sleep well at night, they see this page, they get pretty darn excited. So super. So I think, Jason, let's go back up to the main menu there on this one, just so we can. So there's really a lot of different things. Maybe we'll hit products and services real quick, but there's a lot of different things that we can do and collect here. Some people may want to collect products and services, so you can use this as a database for when you're doing RFXs and RFQs, RFPs. You know, you can start collecting. You understand, hey, they sell this particular product. Let's go talk to them. You can track locations if you're a multi-location business, as many of you are. You know, so they supply these products and services, and then which locations would they be able to support? NACIS codes, all kinds of different information you can collect relative to product and services. And for a lot of our customers, again, this is pretty important, not only to understand the profile of the customer, of the vendor that they're dealing with, but again, for downstream, when they need another request, they have an emergency request, they need to find someone that does wall block pavers, and they need that in Maryland, and they need it now, they can go in the database and find that information very quickly. So, thanks, Jason. Yeah, go back to that main menu real quick. Then we'll move along. So as you can see, there's really a host of things. You can collect references. You can collect, you know, sustainability information if your company has a sustainability project. Ownership and diversity is a big one. Again, a lot of companies track diversity, where you can go in and take a look at that and collect all that information. And again, do some validation. So affiliates, subsidiaries, anything that's really important to you, this thing is really very highly configurable. So again, anybody wants more information on specifically on the onboarding, certainly we'll give you some contact information, you know, on the back end of this, and we'll be glad to have a more detailed discussion. So, super, Jason. Let's move along here. I think. You know, so now that you've onboarded vendors, again, we're going to try to follow that cycle that we talked about a little bit earlier. So now that you've kind of collected information, you've onboarded that vendor, now we're going to start into the transaction process. And one of the things we may want to do with some of that information we just collected is we may decide we're going to start sending out some RFQs because we need some products or services. And one thing that this portal can do, and even though we're showing you different examples of different portals, one point I would certainly make to you is that all of these can be integrated into one integrated portal at all the same look and feel. We're showing you bits and pieces from different portals to show you functionality, but this all can be blended where you can have those parts and pieces you need and those you don't need. So Jason, let's just take a real quick look at RFQs, and I'll show you what we mean. So you go into this section, and you will notice here there's a lot of information on this screen. So if you're going to go out and you want to put out an RFQ, you can go ahead and dispatch that RFQ by going into your list of names, the names of vendors. So if you have a particular product that you want and you want to send out RFQs to that vendor, and again, there's a lot of names in here, so let's just for the sake of argument, say you sent this RFQ out to 50 different companies or 20 different companies. So you'll see them displayed here. These are the companies you sent them out to, and then you'll see a status there. You'll see status new, acknowledged, and what that simply means is that thing is going out to potential suppliers and vendors that you want to submit an RFQ. They're going to get a copy of that RFQ, and then depending on what they do with it, if they ignore it, then it's going to say new. And why that's important is, again, some of the back-end stuff that we've talked about, there's timers on this. If it's important to you, and it's going to be more important in PO than it certainly is in RFQ, but if it's important to you that these people respond and stay on top of things, you can tell by the fact that it's in a new state that nobody has actually looked at it yet. So there can actually have timers on there, which once again can trigger an email either to a buyer and or to the prospective supplier to say, hey, we sent you an RFQ, you haven't done anything with it. Could you please check it out? If you were to click that, we're not going to click the PDF. I don't want to take time because it's just going to be a standard RFQ. But once you clicked it, then you would have some decisions to make. You could either acknowledge it, you could reject it, or you could just look at it and say, hey, I'll worry about it later. And you'll see those statuses reflected in the status column there. So then you at least know, okay, they've acknowledged it, they've looked at it, they've opened it and viewed it, but they haven't really given me information, or perhaps they don't care to participate and they've decided to reject it. So the information that you see is really, there's a lot of information here, and you can have more or you can have less. Jason, anything you want to add down here?
Sure. Once again, there's some stuff happening in the background. Jim mentioned some, obviously the time-related actions that we've been talking about, but also we also understand that you want to interact with your suppliers in a kind of frictionless way, and sometimes that just means you send out an RFQ via email, and you want them to be able to respond via email. We can support that as well. So, if you want them to be able to acknowledge receipt, we can support that. If you want them to be able to say, I'm definitely in, and here's my responding documents, we can support that as well. So, and of course, naturally, we can support them coming into the portal and providing that stuff in the sort of the traditional online way. But again, the idea is to not put the portal front and center between you and your suppliers, but to allow it to help you have this frictionless relationship, particularly in the transactional areas.
Super, appreciate that, Jason. Yeah, and you'll see add attachment, which is another one. They can add attachments that may be important to you, or even their response. So let's move on to the PO dispatch, which is going to look very, very similar and have very similar functionality to what we just talked about. Now, again, in this case, you're dispatching purchase orders out to your vendor, and the way this process is going to work, when you decide who you're going to send this purchase order to, it's going to go into the address book, and it's going to send an email link, which they will then come into your portal. So they're going to be notified, hey, you have a purchase order waiting for you. Once again, they can come in. They can view that purchase order, and you'll once again notice the status bar. It's going to let you know what's going on with that. And here, the timer is going to be much more important, right? I mean, if you have a purchase order, it's pretty important. You need to get some product out to one of your plants. It's time sensitive. If the timer is on and nobody's looking at that, then you're going to be very time sensitive. You're going to react to that. So you have new, accepted, rejected. You have any number of different things. We have filters that you can go ahead and filter it by, any number of categories that you can use. So again, very, very similar to, in functionality to the RFQ1. Jason, anything you want to add to this one?
Nope. This one is, it's it's just the next step in your business process, but from a portal perspective, it's very similar data, maybe just a little more refined.
Yeah, and when you have things like rejected, by the way, you'll notice one of the things in the status is rejected. If they reject the PO, one of the things that it absolutely, why don't we go ahead and hit one of those view PDF, Jason? One thing it's going to do is it's going to force you, and this is just obviously it's a test document. So when he gets out of this, it's going to, if he rejects this, it's going to actually force him to give a reason. That's okay, Jason. It will actually force the user to give a reason. So you can't just reject it and not say anything. It's going to force it to communicate with your system as to why you're rejecting it. So again, the buyer can respond. And then finally, on the last bit of this, let's go ahead and go into the update. Okay, Jason, thanks. A lot of companies who deal in things that are time sensitive and really want updates on what's going on with shipments becomes very important to them. We can do PO updates. So what that means is that's your company, requesting an update from the vendor. So you have things, and in this case, we have things that all have critical expediting. So, say you have some time critical thing, you're running a power plant and you need some coal to run your power plant. Well, if that coal shipment doesn't show up in time, you got a problem. So it's very important to you. So you may not wait to find out what's going on. You may request from that vendor, give me an update, tell me what's going on with this shipment. Is it going to be on time? What's the case? So we'll go ahead and pick one, and we'll go ahead and we'll hit update selected, and you'll see what happens here. So now it asks you for status, and again, there's a demo system. It's configurable. You can put in whatever you want, but there's a drop down here. What's the status? Tell me what the status is. To be shipped. It's already shipped. There's a new delivery date. New delivery date. So now you're going to have to give a reason for that, and you're going to have to tell them what the new delivery date is, which you can pick up from a menu. It could be a supplier delay. Pick your date, any remarks. In this case, it requires that you put in some kind of remark, and then send the update. So what it's doing is, and you wouldn't do this certainly with every PO, but for those POs where you really, in certain industries, where it's very important for you to track that and understand and make sure those shipments are coming in on time, this is a very proactive thing you can do where, again, you're going out and reaching out to your suppliers and saying, hey, please let me know what's going on with this purchase order. Please give me an update. If everything's copacetic, fantastic. But if there is some kind of a delay, you're taking a very proactive approach. You're going to know what's going on ahead of time.
And Jim, I'd just like to add too here, and this was actually also true of pretty much all of the forms we've seen is they're very responsive. So if it's to be shipped, you'll see the data changes. If it's shipped, it's gonna ask for a tracking number and a carrier. And so we can really, depending on what the particular condition is, we can make sure that you're getting the information that you need from the supplier. So of course, right now, this would be the supplier's view. So I've failed to deliver a PO, an order on time. Perhaps I'm not even late yet, but maybe it's something critical to the continuity of my business. We do work for energy companies, for example, and components for nuclear power plants get put on the critical list pretty early, for example. So this provides your suppliers a way to say, oh, no, it's okay, you're going to be fine. Here's what's going on. It's going to be shipped, and here's when I expect it to be shipped, and everything should be just fine. Or if you do have a problem, perhaps give your suppliers an opportunity to get that information out to you, and then you can make decisions accordingly.
Super. Thank you, Jason. So again, it's not for everybody, but there are certainly folks out there that have a lot of value in that, based on the type of business they're in, the type of industry they're in. This can be a very powerful tool. So let's move along now, and we're going to, now that we've gotten through RFQ and we've selected our vendor, we've submitted our PO, and now we come into the payable side of the house. Now we're going to show submitting invoices electronically. I know this is of interest to a lot of people who are getting invoices either through payable, either through email, through the U.S. mail, and having to scan paper. So we see a lot of people now wanting to move to electronic invoicing, and what better way to do than using a vendor portal where we can do that. Jason, if we can move over and take a look at that. There we go. All right, so just to describe this form real quickly here, what you're seeing is, and this is, again, this one is for one of our customers, US Foods. So this one was, again, configured for their needs, but again, they all pretty much look and seem the same kind of way. So you're collecting information here. So we have a number of different things going on. You're selecting, obviously, you're the vendor. You put your name in. It's going to autofill certain information for you. And you could manually input invoice number, invoice date, any discount terms in this particular case. If you see the line item numbers there, you can the item numbers there. You can actually go in and enter, line by line, or you can do more of a PO flip where you put the PO number in. It goes out, it hits the PO system, and pulls back those lines. Jason, any commentary on this one?
Yeah, there are a few points of interest on the invoice submit here. So the first thing, obviously, is we design it to look a lot like an invoice, so it should be pretty easy for folks to work with. The remit to addresses that we were talking about when we did the profile, those would carry through your vendor master and then be reflected back into a process like this. So in this case, we're logged in as .foods, for example, and you just select that remit to address, and if for whatever reason your remit to address wasn't there, you would be able to go back, update your profile. There may be a workflow associated with that. Maybe you'd have to provide letterhead so you can avoid fraud, those sorts of things. But again, sort of a virtuous cycle here of being able to allow the vendor to handle their own problems, as much as possible without, requiring your intervention. Certainly, you can put rules on all of these fields. What we tend to do is say, don't dissuade your vendors from submitting their invoices this way. Because they submitted doesn't mean you're paying them necessarily. So we like to encourage folks to put up the fewest possible obstacles here. Some of our customers put up more, some put up fewer. Again, it's very configurable for you. But for example, if you had a limitation on your backend system that invoice number could only be X characters, you could actually limit that here and push that problem off onto your vendor rather than trying to figure out, okay, am I going to cut that stuff off the front or the back when it doesn't fit? And there's at least one person on the call, I'm sure, that has had that problem. Terms can be described in any way. We can present terms that are only favorable to you guys based on the vendor master data, for example. So perhaps some of your vendors have very aggressive terms. We cannot present those to other vendors that maybe are on the standard terms. So we can look at the vendor master terms and only provide, that term or better. And this can be presented in a variety of ways. One of the areas that Jim talked about was PO flip. So if you provide us with PO information, or if we integrate with your backend system, both are available options, then when your supplier types in a PO number and then tabs out of that field, we just do it that way, it goes out, gets that information. Again, in this case, we're going directly against a back-end system, against the ERP to pull that information out, but that can also be handled if you provide that updates with that information. We can also mask some data here. So, for example, in the case of US Foods here, they did not want to divulge the PO price and the PO, or I'm sorry, the quantity and the unit price here, because some of their vendors weren't very tidy bookkeepers, and they might take today's price as the unit price, and that actually might be better than the PO price. So if they're going to invoice for a price that's less than the PO price, they wanted to take advantage of it. Most of our customers don't do that, but you can. You can also apply special allowances and charges, both at the line level. So this is one implementation of that, and then of course there are also header level charges, weight charges, freight charges, things like that, that might be applied at the invoice level as well. So the vendor fills all this information out and then submits this. One of the interesting things that we found is even in environments that have strong EDI relationships and the sorts of environments where you might not expect a high volume of submitted invoices, we actually find that the volume can still be very high, because this is sort of the safety valve. If something doesn't make it into the EDI file, or if the EDI file bombed out at your van because of some sort of problem, for those critical invoices, this is a really nice path to get that stuff in and paid. And then, of course, you can apply duplicate checking and those sorts of things to prevent, if the EDI transaction does eventually come in, any issues downstream. So, Jim, that's all I had.
Super. I mean, thanks, Jason. It's a real powerful tool. Again, as you can see, if you're using the PO flip, then you're going to have your matching taken care of if that matches up. So it really helps on the payable side of the house because, again, it's really going to support you know, a touchless payables processing environment to a large degree. Jason, if you could scan down to the bottom of that form. There we go. And it has other functionalities, like you can add notes if you want notes that can just be seen internally or that you want to pass on, to somebody at the company. You submit it, you can make a copy of it, make a PDF copy of it. So there's a lot of different functionality. And again, I'm being redundant in a lot of different configurability. So if there's different information you want or other things you see on here that are things you might not necessarily want, not a problem. It's very easy to configure these for what works for your business. So now that we've gone ahead and we've submitted that invoice, and we're not going to submit it because we don't actually want to create an invoice in the system there. Now we're moving on to kind of the post-process environment. You know, we had the pre-process, and then we process things. So now now that invoice has been processed, and now you have the situation where you have people calling in and saying, oh, you know, where is my invoice? Where is my payment? Did you get my invoice? When am I going to get paid? Things of that nature. So they want to inquire about payment. And again, with that self-service, vendor self-service, kind of theme in place, we provide that ability for them to come in and check the status. So in this case, they're checking for status of a product that has been received that you can see, and it's going to go out and it's going to show a status of in process. If they don't really understand what that means, we're going to be able to show them exactly. Go ahead, Jason. There you go. So we actually have a little legend in there in this particular one that US Foods put in. So when their people come in and they say, well, okay, well, what does this mean, product not received? Well, it tells them, obviously, product is not in our warehouse, so contact the buyer, to see what the status is. So they don't have to call you and call your organization into your payables or your vendor service department and find out that information. They can go 24/7, get online, figure out the information they want to figure out, if it's in process or whatever the case may be. If it's been paid, we can go back in. Jason, let's go look at a paid one. So you can have different categories here. So we see ones that have been paid. They can see the check number. They can get a copy if they wanted to of the remittance information. They get all the information they need, PO numbers, all of that is really there and available to them. So it really is, this thing, believe it or not, is simplistic as it may seem and obvious as it may seem. Maybe that's a better word. It's one of the things in talking to our customers that is one of the most powerful tools for them, because it provides just a wealth of information back to their vendors. We have different customers have different capabilities. We have some customers that allow them to download images, of the actual invoice, of remittance, of all kinds of things that may be important for their records. Again, so they're not calling you, having you send them information, everything they need at their fingertips. You, as the customer, decide what information they get to see and what information they don't. And literally every customer we have that has one of these portals, has differing information, different levels of information they're willing to share. Whatever information it is, you can export that, which is pretty important. So as you're doing your accounting in your books, your supplier can go in and they can download that and export that information into an Excel spreadsheet. It helps them do their month-end reconciliations and those kinds of things. So it really, while it's a value add certainly to you as the buying company, because certainly you're pushing a lot of these activities that you would be doing in-house and answering these questions to the supplier, let them do it as self-service. It's also a powerful tool for the supplier, because trust me, they would much rather come in, get the information they need, download it, do what they have to do on their time. Maybe they're not in the same time zone as you, than really have to call you, sit on hold, get a call back. So certainly very, very, very powerful. Jason, anything you want to add?
Yeah, Jim, I had a few things. I'm just sort of taking the role of explaining things that can be offered in the back end here that might not be obvious from the demo. But certainly, when you download, when you export that data, you get a nice Excel spreadsheet with not just page 1 here, but in this case, all 114 pages. And what we've found over the course of putting together many of these portals is there's a few work habits that vendors have that sort of come to the fore. And one of the things we noticed is many people, especially people in the AR departments for your suppliers, they'll log on to the portal. They'll say, show me invoices paid or received or whatever within the past 7 days. They'll go to that page. They'll immediately hit export, and then they're gone. And so we've also now started to offer the ability for those vendors to subscribe to that information via email. So, again, going for that frictionless interaction between you and your supplier. If a lot of your suppliers won't call you and are happy waiting as long as they can sort of get a constant update as to what's going on, then we can set up daily emails for those suppliers on a subscription basis, so they can say, hey, you know what, this search here that shows me the last 7 days worth of data, that is great. I would love to be able to see that every day in an email. And what we can do is, in a background process, usually during the middle of the night when resources are cheap, go ahead, your resources, go ahead and gather up that information and send that out to all of your suppliers. So it reduces the load on your suppliers. They don't have to chase you down for that information. It makes them a little bit happier. Of course, we always offer a link back to the portal to encourage the engagement that you might want in some other areas. But definitely, that is something that that some of our customers who have started to take advantage of that are seeing tremendous benefit, and that can work internally and externally as well. This same information is available to you guys internally, and certainly your ERP can have this information already, but there's nothing that stops you from performing a query that says, hey, I want to see, I'm really interested in this supplier because we're in hot negotiations, and I want to get a daily email as to what our outstanding balances are with this supplier. That's something that we can do and have done for several of our customers as well.
Super, Jason, appreciate it.